Hello everyone, it's Dylan from Yu-Gi-Oh! Everything, and welcome back to another Yu-Gi-Oh! Top 10 video. We've done it with Duel Monsters, we've done it with GX, and in today's video, we are going to be ranking the 10 strongest duelists from the Yu-Gi-Oh! 5Ds anime. Now, if you're unfamiliar with these lists, basically, I am ranking these characters at their maximum strength, not how they ended the show, and I'm ranking them solely from dueling ability, not from how good their character was. I'll have my GX and Duel Monsters videos linked down below, and I do plan to do this for every single Yu-Gi-Oh! Series. And without any further ado, let's begin. Here are my 10 strongest duelists from Yu-Gi-Oh! 5Ds. I hope you guys enjoy. Number 10, Rua or Leo in the dub. So this was actually one that I did not think was going to make my list, but hear me out. I actually think that Leo is at his strongest at the very end of Yu-Gi-Oh! 5Ds when he officially becomes the signer and literally sparks the comeback against Aporia when dueling with Jack and Ruka, his sister. I think it's one of the coolest moments that any character in 5Ds has, and it's still today one of my favorite moments in all of Yu-Gi-Oh! And I feel like that's the moment where Leo really came into his own and became an actually competent and really strong duelist. We had always seen shades of his dueling ability throughout the show, but it was never on display quite like it was during that Aporia duel in the final season. And so I feel like by the end of the show, Rua has become a very respectable and strong duelist in his own right, and so he just sneaks into the number 10 spot for me on this list. Number 9, Antinomy. Antinomy is a tough one to rank because outside of defeating the Diablo army, he really didn't win a duel, I think, ever. He dueled Yusei really well on 2 different occasions, and I feel like he would have beaten a lot of other characters if he just wasn't dueling Yusei, who, as we know, is maybe the strongest and most talented duelist that we've ever seen in Yu-Gi-Oh! So I feel like his 2 matchups being against Yusei don't really speak to the strength and the type of duelist that Antinomy is in terms of his win-loss record, because again, he didn't win that many duels in 5Ds, but I still feel like he is one of the stronger duelists that we ever saw, and he's responsible for teaching Yusei how to go beyond synchro summoning, so that's got to count for something. Number 8. Aki or Akiza in the dub. So this was another tough character to rank because Aki is probably at her strongest in the Dark Signers arc, and I feel like her as a duelist and her dueling abilities kind of dwindles down in the second half of 5Ds, even though she does have a very impressive win against Sherry alongside Crow in that final season. But that being said, Aki is a really competent duelist, one of the best girl duelists we have probably ever seen in Yu-Gi-Oh! I can't really have her ranked too much higher than this, because outside of beating Dark Signer Misty and Sherry, which was a team effort with Crow, she didn't really have any super impressive wins. I do have her a little ahead of Antinomy because she actually was able to win duels against somewhat quality opponents, but I genuinely believe the characters ahead of her on here are all slightly stronger duelists than she is. Number 7, Kidu or Kalin in the dub. So there's a good chance that Kidu is at his strongest when he uses the powers of the Dark Signers, and Kidu is a really strong duelist, so the fact that I have him ranked so low should tell you the scaling of the duelists that are going to be ranked ahead of him on this list. But Kidu had a really impressive pseudo-victory against Yusei the first time they dueled. He did blindside him with the Earthbound Immortal, but it was a really good showing for Kidu, and we also see how strong he is because he puts up 2 other really good fights against Yusei, and he defeats Loten and saves Crashtown a little later on after the Dark Signers arc. So Kidu, a really solid duelist in his own right, probably at his strongest when he was in Dark Signer form, but he does come in at number 7 in the strength rankings. Number 6, Rex Godwin. So the ultimate boss of the Dark Signers arc, Rex Godwin, is also, of course, a really tough opponent. It's hard to rank antagonists sometimes because antagonists like Godwin only duel a single time, and so you have to rank their dueling ability against characters that we've seen duel many, many times over, and so that can sometimes be hard. So maybe Godwin should be a little higher here because he did eliminate Jack and Crow from that 3 versus 1 duel before ultimately losing to Yusei Fudo. Godwin is a super strong duelist, a fitting end boss to the Dark Signers arc, but I think a lack of duels probably affects me from putting him a little higher than 6, and so that's why I have him maybe a little low in the middle of this list. Number 5, Aporia. So speaking of final villains, Aporia seemingly was the final villain of the entire second half of 5Ds before, of course, you had the Neo arc, Cradle arc, and you learned that his boss Zone, who, spoiler alert, will also be higher on this list, was actually the final villain. Aporia dueled a little more than Godwin, and I feel like he's probably around the same level of dueling strength as Godwin, even though Aporia did lose to Yusei and Team 5Ds. He then went on to lose against Rua, Ruka, and Jack, but he probably would have won that duel if Rua didn't become a signer and Lifestream Dragon didn't save their ass in that duel. And then he ended up losing to Zone, which, of course, it's Zone. You can't beat Destiny. I honestly went back and forth between him and Godwin here, 5 and 6, but I do have him just edging out Godwin because we've seen him duel multiple times, whereas Godwin only dueled once, so Aporia takes the 5 spot for me. Number 4, Crow. So obviously, we do not have anyone from our core Team 5Ds on the list, that being Core, Jack, and Yusei, until now, and that is Crow at the number 4 spot. Crow was a really strong duelist. He only lost a single 1v1 duel, and that was to Linden, that clock dude, and the only reason he lost is because he threw. He didn't activate a trap that would have ended up winning him the duel. So Crow was shown to be over and over an insanely competent and strong duelist. I still do view him, though, as the weakest duelist in comparison to Yusei, Jack, and Crow, Team 5Ds. Maybe that's up for debate, but I feel like putting Crow here at number 4 is a really fair position. Number 3, Zone, the final boss of Yu-Gi-Oh! 5Ds. So we only saw Zone duel on 2 separate occasions. He calmly and calculatedly defeated Aporia before giving Yusei the fight of his life in the skies over Neo Domino City, and what a lot of people feel is one of the best duels in all of Yu-Gi-Oh! Zone is shown off to be one of the toughest opponents that any Yu-Gi-Oh! Protagonist has ever had to face, and I think him getting that win versus Aporia before he had to run into the Yu-Gi-Oh! Protagonist buzzsaw of Yusei really propels him higher on this list for me than some of the other villains, because we know that he is capable of defeating other characters. And I mean, it took Yusei, 5 episodes to defeat him, and my god, that was an insane duel. Yusei had to use all the powers of every single Signer Dragon. He had to bust out shooting Quasar Dragon. It is almost a miracle that Yusei was able to defeat Zone, and so it's obvious to me that Zone is one of the strongest duelists in Yu-Gi-Oh! 5Ds. Number 2, Jack Atlas. So it might be a controversial pick to put Jack Atlas ahead of Zone, who is obviously the main villain of Yu-Gi-Oh! 5Ds, but hear me out. I really believe the entire story of Yu-Gi-Oh! 5Ds is that Jack is the best duelist in the world, except for Yusei, who is obviously number 1. And I feel like that's the entire story of Jack Atlas, or a major part of it. Always chasing Yusei and never being able to actually defeat Yusei. He duels Yusei on 3 different occasions throughout the Yu-Gi-Oh! 5D story, in the very beginning and at the very end for the ceremonial duel, and he's never able to defeat Yusei. But you take Yusei out of the mix, and I genuinely believe that Jack is capable of defeating any character in a duel, and I think that was shown to us many, many times. Without Yusei there, he became king of duels, and on multiple different occasions, Jack stepped up to the plate and was always a super competent and skilled duelist. Now, yes, he did lose quite a few duels here and there, but I just feel like if you gave Jack the power of the Signer Dragons, just like all the Signers gave Yusei the power of the Signer Dragons, I feel like he's the only other character in the show that has a chance of being able to defeat Zone. That's how highly I rank Jack as a duelist, and I genuinely do believe he is the second strongest duelist in all of 5Ds. And of course, number 1 is Yusei Fudo. So we've done this list now for the first 3 Yu-Gi-Oh shows, and the main protagonist has been number 1 on all of my rankings. I guarantee you that's going to change for the next 2 Yu-Gi-Oh shows, but for 5Ds, it's no doubt Yusei is the strongest duelist in terms of dueling ability. I also think he's probably the best character in the show. Yusei's always been a personal favorite of mine, and much like Yu-Gi-Oh! GX, with Judai being number 1, I don't think anyone can honestly debate Yusei not being the strongest duelist in the Yu-Gi-Oh! 5Ds universe. I just don't think there's any debate that can be had. I think it's that clear cut. So I'm not even really going to take time to explain it. He is one of the best duelists we've ever seen, and Yusei is, of course, at the top of the food chain in these rankings. And that about wraps it up. Thank you guys all so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed my top 10 strongest duelist rankings in all of 5Ds. Please let me know your thoughts down below. Let me know if you agree or disagree with my rankings, and be sure to check out my videos for Duel Monsters and GX. If you have not already, they'll be linked in the description, and be on the lookout for me to do the other shows. That's all coming soon. I want to thank all of you guys so much for watching. I'll talk to you in the comments, and I hope you have an amazing day. Take care, guys.